doesn't seem to be an in-between when it comes to Sid and Nancy. It's either downright hated or utterly adored, and that sentiment doesn't stop at the cast and crew either. My mom was the first who actually introduced me to the 1986 film, and I absolutely loved it, but it was weird to me that a lot of people actually don't like it, actually wish, in fact, that they did another version of their story. So I kind of want to go into that, and I also want to go into the actual story behind the film, you know, what they got right, what they got wrong, and the symbolism behind it. So without further ado, let's look at the real story behind Sid and Nancy. Sid Vicious was born John Simon Ritchie on May 10th, 1957. He constantly moved around and lived in relentless poverty with only his mother, Anne Ritchie, providing. So I just want to point out that most people know her as Anne Beverly, and that's because in her next marriage, after Sid's father, she changed it to Beverly. She acted more as a BFF than a mother due to her lifelong struggle with heroin and opiates, an addiction that inevitably led over to a teenage Simon. Like other lost boys and girls rebelling against the swinging 60s generation, he became addicted to drugs, alcohol, and the punk rock scene, especially once his best mate John Lydon joined a little-known band called the Sex Pistols. That was when both men nicknamed themselves Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious played up the second half of his nickname by wreaking havoc at almost every single Sex Pistols gig. Despite not initially knowing a single thing about guitar, Sid's violent image brought him on board as the punk rock band's bassist to scream, shout, and occasionally strum a coherent note or two. His lack of skill never appeared to be an issue, however, as each member wasn't too pressed on topping the charts. They were more interested in contributing to Great Britain's revolution against the establishment. It wasn't long until Sid met Nancy, and the two became an inseparable item. Nancy Laura Spungen was a troubled young woman who literally fought from the day she was born. On February 27th, 1958, Nancy was choked by her own umbilical cord during delivery, an unfortunate event that nearly killed her. Detailed in the memoir, And I Don't Want to Live This Life, a mother's story of her daughter's murder by Deborah Spungen, Nancy was a temperamental child, to say the least. She committed such acts as threatening to kill her babysitter with a pair of scissors, mercilessly bullying her younger siblings, attempting to batter her psychiatrist, and so on. Yeah. Be prepared to have a long nap if any of you guys decide to read this book. It wasn't until a teenage Nancy Spungen got diagnosed with schizophrenia that her parents truly understood what was going on. But at that point, there was nothing Nancy's parents could really do, especially once she turned 18 and had the free agency to do whatever she wanted, whenever she pleased. Sid and Nancy is an intriguing hot take on a tragically real cautionary tale. With what little we know about the dysfunctional couple, and considering their relationship only lasted a grand total of 19 months, it was a frickin' miracle the cast and crew managed to pull it off at all. Still, many beg to differ, including Johnny Rotten himself. In an interview with drdrew.com, he stated that it was so typical, so completely taken away from reality, a film that is to be expected. When I raised a protest, Alex Cox, the filmmaker, said, "Well, this is my version," which Johnny wasn't wrong. Alex did admit in a 2016 interview that in hindsight he wished he had taken Johnny Rotten's approach a little more seriously. However, I disagree. Sure, Sid and Nancy isn't 100% accurate, but how could it be when the entire narrative is shown from the main character's drug-fueled point of view? I mean, think about it. The chronology of events is completely out of sync. One minute, Sid is shooting the music video for the My Way cover. The next minute, he and Nancy are sat on the bed, dazed and confused in a dingy hotel room. This technique even shows up at the very start, wherein the film opens with the murder rather than Sid and Nancy's first meeting. In my personal opinion, I'd much rather have this than another by-the-numbers biopic like well, Bohemian Rhapsody, which superficially pleased but failed to ultimately embody the real, powerful lives at hand. Take this scene, for example. Whilst on their infamous US tour, Sid gets battered by a group of angry concertgoers. The Sex Pistols manager, Malcolm McLaren, comes to his rescue and pulls out a gun. Though instead of an actual gun, it's a finger gun. Pew pew! This is a perfect instance of something that could have partially stemmed from Sid's drug use or wholly stemmed from drug use. You know, this film reminds me a lot of Joker, which also demonstrates losing touch with reality incredibly well. However, instead of the reason being due to mental illness, it's heroin. On the morning of October 12, 1978, police were called by Manhattan's Hotel Chelsea after a bellboy discovered Nancy Spungeon's lifeless body, slumped underneath the bathroom sink. The police arrived to find Sid Vicious wandering the halls wailing he had killed Nancy, a statement he later backtracked from when he didn't really want to be looked at for the murder. The coroners concluded that she bled to death from a single stab wound. Luckily for Sid, Nancy was a known drug addict and ex-prostitute and stripper, which gave his lawyers leeway to begin blame on a mysterious drug dealer. A conspiracy theory the film half-heartedly acknowledges. A few months after Virgin Records paid Sid's $50,000 bail, he died from a heroin overdose, likely given to him by Anne Beverly, his mother. Now, bear with me here. This is an element I think Sid and Nancy got unintentionally right. Anytime a cold case gets solved, it always seems to add up to the most boring explanation possible. And that's exactly what I believe happened here. Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen fought. He stabbed her. Both fell asleep. She woke up, went to the bathroom, and then collapsed from blood loss. It completely aligns with Sid's initial reaction, how heavy their drug consumption was, and their history with domestic violence. In fact, one of the last conversations Nancy had with Deborah Spungen, her mother, was about how Sid tore her ear off during their time in London together. Alex Cox stressed the fact he wanted to showcase the sheer brutality of addiction. So I think the decision to not have a big secret unveiled comes from that thought process alone. Because addiction doesn't allow individuals to go out in a blaze of glory, but as the flicker of a dying candle. Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen both carried with them death wishes from the time they were born. Sadly, it resulted in their untimely demises. Nevertheless, I think Sid and Nancy did their stories justice, especially near the end when Sid lives out his own version of heaven. It's cheesy, I know, but I think it's the ending they would have wanted. If there was one thing almost every single individual has mentioned about punk rock Romeo and Juliet, it's that Sid truly loved Nancy. And Nancy truly loved Sid. It's just a shame they met in this life and not in any other. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was super fun because I love this genre. Also, if you have any ideas for upcoming videos related to true crime, let me know in the comments section below. Please like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified about any other videos I do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys!